Hello YouTube! Today we are looking at all of the small, tiny mounts to mount your phone or mirrorless camera. This video is brought to you by a listener question. Jenna asked what kind of small mounts to get specifically for this little ball head. This is the Oben BD02. It costs about 10 bucks, and we're going to look at all of these small travel, tabletop, phone mirrorless type mounts under the sun. Like literally all of them. For this video, we're not really going into kind of links or who makes what necessarily, just because there might be a lot of brands that make more or less the same thing, and this is just the ones that we happen to have. It doesn't mean that they're the best ones, but a lot of people make the same thing so that you can, see what thing you like. Google it real quick and you'll be able to find it. So with all of that in mind, we're going to go more or less smallest to largest for our video. So let's start with the phone camera mounts. So the first things that you have is literally the smallest, easiest one. It's just a tiny little spring. You can throw your phone in there. These are the smallest, cheapest, easiest. I'm not a huge fan because they don't grip as well as some of the other options. The next step up from that is this guy. He's got teeth on both sides and it holds the phone nice and tight. This particular one has mounting options on the bottom and the back. And the next step up from that is this particular one is made by Manfrotto. So this is a little bit more finicky as you have to screw it into place to get it to hold. But once you do, it has a ball on the back, which is kind of cool, and you can set it up on a tabletop and you can screw that in and it can stand up on its own, or it has threads on the bottom that you can attach this to a larger tripod and use it as a phone mount. And then of course with the ball you can angle it. It's got a decent range of motion. So yeah, this is, again, I picked this one up for super cheap as well, and it has it's been a nice little phone mount. And so on the rare occasion that I do use my phone for stuff, I can have that right there. This next one is pretty cool. This one is made by Moment. It has this cold shoe on the back of it, but this one is a magnet. So if you happen to have a case that has a magnet in it, or if you're an iPhone user, there it is, right there. And it's got a mount on the bottom that you can attach to any ball head, tripod, etc. Just your standard mount, and holds really tight. So this is a fun little gizmo, and it holds your phone. Pretty cool. So those are kind of the small phone mounts that we're looking at. If you use your phone, you need to have one of those. The rest of these can be used for anything, phone, mirrorless, etc. So I'm gonna start with some old ones that I have. I have no idea what the brand on this one is. I've found this in my parents' basement, but it is this tiny little travel tripod. Let's see if I can get the legs get a little stuck. And it just, ta-da! And then it's got a little release ring right there so that the ball head can be tightened, and now it won't go anywhere, and you can attach stuff as is. So tiny little travel tripod. I have another version. This one is flimsy and plastic and made by Ultrapod, also something that I found in my parents' basement. Another version of the tiny tabletop tripod, just like that. Clearly, when you have something this light, it might budge. But this one is kind of neat because it has an L curve. So you pop these down, and now you can strap this to any kind of pole, stop sign, post, anything you want. So whether it's round or square, this can strap pretty tightly, and now you have a little travel post. Great for GoPro or any kind of small camera. So that's another neat little one that I happen to have on hand. Now the ones that aren't, the garage sale specials. This is one that you can actually buy. This is Manfrotto Pixi, and it is just a nice little tripod. And I believe you hold this in, and this can turn around, and as soon as you let go, It's nice and tight, and it just floats on the pod right there. Super easy, tiny little tabletop thing with a built-in ball head that you can attach your phone or mirrorless camera to. Next up, we have the Platypod. Now, I love the Platypod. I have multiple sizes of that. I've done a whole video review of that. I'm going to put a link down in the description to that other video if you're interested. But here is the smaller version of the Platypod. You can put your ball head right on there. It has all of these little attachments where I can put any kind of standard camera mount pin attachment on there. It comes with straps just like this guy, so I can attach this to anything. It comes with ground spikes so that it can be leveled. The ground spikes can go spiky side down into the dirt or round side down if you're on a table like this. So you can level and get a nice little tabletop low profile mount. So I'm a huge, massive fan of these, which is why I own 2 of them. The other things this comes with, it comes with a non-stick grip pad thing so that you can set this down and it won't slide across your table. And it also comes with a little baggie that holds all of those pins and mounts and grips that I talked about earlier. So huge fan of Platypod, definitely go check them out. Now, let's move on to some of the bigger style tabletop tripods. So first up in the tabletop category, we have the OG, the original Gorillapod. Got 2 different versions here in front of me. These are obviously the larger version. There is a really tiny version. I did own the tiny version at one point, but I found it to be completely and utterly useless for any of my purposes. It didn't have enough clamping power, or it wasn't stable enough in any kind of weight you put on it. So I'm not sure what size these are. Stuart, the big one? They're the big one. So these are the big one. I know they come in various sizes. We've got a standard normal one, and we have one with these things here. So you can attach lights or shotgun mics or whatever peripheries that you want to attach to it. So the good thing about Gorillapods is when you are out traveling with them, you can put them on uneven terrain. You can wrap them around poles. They can do all of the things you need them to do. The bad thing about Gorillapods is when you are here in the studio doing any kind of tabletop or product photography, good freaking luck getting this level. It's a nightmare. So, excellent for travel, terrible for studio. Moving on. Next up, this is a tabletop tripod / selfie stick thing. This particular one's made by GoPro. You can see it's got the GoPro mount on there, although I'm sure you could attach a thread on there and easily convert this to a phone or a mirrorless camera mount. So this particular one, let's loosen it up here. It folds out, and of course it turns into the selfie stick mode with some points of articulation if you need it. But the bottom also splays out, and you have a awkward-ish tabletop tripod. I have also seen this particular thing made by DJI, as well as a few other, small tabletop companies. This one's kind of strange and funky, and this is actually an excellent point of the video to point out, remember your high school physics class. When you are looking at any kind of tabletop thing, you want to make sure that the center of gravity of whatever you're putting over it is over the base. So if your base is not very heavy, then your center of gravity is up here. If your base is heavy, then no matter what you put up here, the center of gravity might still be down near the base. Obviously, if you put something too far out and a little bit of weight, it can fall over, which is what we don't want. I'm not saying this is bad, I'm just saying you need to know the capabilities of what all of these things can and can't do. So excellent for all of your GoPro travel selfie stick needs here. Next up, we have the Switchpod. So if you wanted something a little sturdier, I also have a full video review of this, which will also be linked down in the description. So opening this up here, the Switchpod is a very metal, heavy enough while light enough to travel, sturdy, pod that it has got these nice little finger grips here so that you can hold it like this or like this, and this is a very comfortable selfie stick for larger camera rigs. Now, the other one's great for GoPros. This one's going to be great for mirrorless or even full-size DSLRs if you are that kind of crazy person. I'm that kind of crazy person. Also splays out and turns into a tabletop tripod. I do have several kind of gripes and complaints of the limits of this piece that I talk about more in that other video, which might be fixed in future updates. The height of it, being able to lock the third leg, etc., etc. I have the original version, but this is also a nice little piece of kit that you can look into. Now let's take a look at things that are meant for your desk. So if you have a studio, if you have a desk, if you want really nice lighting for that zoom setup you've got going, or if you're doing any kind of tabletop photography that is in a spot, this section's for you. So we have a generic Amazon desk clamp one. This one has a tiny little ball head attached to the top of it. And of course, it can go high, it can go low, it can do all the things that you need it to do. We have a tiny little guy here by Elgato. This one is part of their whole system, which we have here. And this particular one, I have so many different arms and attachments for this guy. This comes in two different versions. You have the desk clamp version, which looks pretty much like this, and you have the heavy base version. I happen to have both, so let's go ahead and show you those. So the desk clamp, it's got all kinds of things going on here. You can heavy clamp it to the pole itself. You can, of course, clamp it to the desk. It's got another little thread here. It's got more stuff here where you can attach the main kind of Elgato ball head system that they have going on. One of the pieces of this system that is cool is they have all of these small little attachments and knuckles, and you can build out this big windy tree, and you can have all kinds of craziness in your setup, which is something that I have absolutely done. I will say the downside to this is the more joints that you add to this extendo tree, the weaker all of those parts are. And you are going to run into issues with sagging, even with something as small as the Lumix mirrorless camera that we've mentioned here on the channel before. So right here, no issues. As soon as I start adding more of those ball joints are only held by friction, and you're gonna get a little bit more sagging. So this is excellent for webcams, or if you're not adding a bunch of extra joints to it. It's not as great, and I'm not as impressed with it as I should have been for how much money I paid for it. But, you know, I was trying to use it for something that's not necessarily its intended purpose, and it works okay. But if you're doing small stuff on your desk and you're not going super crazy with kind of over-the-head type stuff, it works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. And this nice heavy base actually gives you, like we said, think about that high school science class, it gives you a nice low center of gravity so that you can put heavier things on it without fear of anything tipping over. And of course, the last thing that we have here is we just have a gooseneck. So you've probably seen GoPros and stuff attached to this. This particular one, I believe, is made by Impact. It is just screwed into a super clamp here on the bottom, and I actually have several of these. At the beginning of the pandemic, I had one of these attached to my monitor, and I was playing with having a nicer webcam setup. I got a little bit lazy and stopped using that, but I also use this one around the studio, and it is nice and strong. It's flexible, it's not too hard to use, but as long as you're not putting too much darn weight on it, it's not gonna sag. I'm pressing pretty hard, and it's not moving. So this gooseneck, super impressed with. Honestly, more impressed than the Elgato setup. But there we have some tabletop options. Now, if you want to get real crazy with it, let's look at a monopod that you might be interested in, as well as a small travel tripod. Let's take a look at what we have here. The first one is this monopod. This monopod is made by iFootage. I believe this is the iFootage Cobra 2. This one is a little bit older, is the C180 version 2. So the cool thing about this, there are several cool things about it. The first one is that it locks in place. It is tripod-ish. You've got 3 feet, and it stays exactly where you want it to unless you really kind of force the ball. And this ball head, it does come loose, so I can, you know, lock it down in a position, but why would I ever want to do that? Just always leave it straight up and down. And it stays in place really well. But here is the cool thing about this monopod, which is why it might be attractive to you if you're doing tabletop. This converts into a very low profile tripod. So let's check this out. So on the top, you can pop this little thing here, and the head comes off. And you can pop the little collet here, and now what you have is the sturdiest, beefiest, let's seat that in there and pop the collet, low profile tripod. So this is so overkill for probably the things I'm going to be putting on it, but if you need something heavy at tabletop height, not quite as low profile as the Platypod, as the ball head is up here, you can get another 2 inches down, but this is more or less as good as it gets if you need to get low profile. Something else that I recommend if you really need to get down to the table, get some Apple boxes and put your set up a little higher so that you can lower your camera. Now, the last thing that we're gonna look at here is a real travel tripod. So this one is the Veo 2, it's made by Vanguard, and it is just a nice little travel tripod. So if you are the type of person that you could use something small like this in studio and you want to go hiking with it, let me tell you, I own several tripods, and this is the smallest and lightest version of anything here. So we have gone through the whole gamut today of phone mounts to small mirrorless mounts to tabletop mounts to some of the travel mounts and some of the over-the-top absolute supreme overkill options if you're only using your phone. But if you are doing this in a professional capacity and want some nifty options, I really love this monopod by iFootage, and then something small like this. There are so many different makers of travel tripods. Get a nice carbon fiber one that jives with you. These are obviously on the spendier side of everything that's going to be in this video, but Jenna, I do hope that answers your question of this particular, where did it go? This tiny little ball head. This and my phone mounts. What kind of things can I attach these to? These are all of the things that I could possibly think of to attach this little guy to, and your phone, your mirrorless camera. So if you have something that you think I missed, be sure to leave a comment on that. All of the normal internet rules apply. Like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends. Give me money on Patreon, you know, the normal stuff. Thank you so much for this question. This was a fun deep dive into all of the stuff clogging up the junk drawers here in the studio. And I do hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.